Please give a big hand to Christopher Brune-Horan. I met Phil, a casting director. Not just a casting director, but the head of television casting for a major Hollywood studio. When I was a young buck waiting tables at a gay restaurant called The Shed. I met him through my straight actor/bartender friend, Sal. Sal's great looks and Matt Dillon likability made people gravitate to him. So when Phil sat back in his enormous third-floor corner office at Fox, sizing me up and chuckling about how Sal and I were exactly how gay and straight men should always interact, it seemed like the natural progression of something great. A new relationship with a powerful man who set about to help me in ways that I had always dreamed of. Now I knew that Phil was gay. The young man in the picture frames around the office with the floppy hair and crooked smile was his lover who had died of AIDS, Sal told me on the way home. That's sad, I said, truly meaning it, still believing it a half hour later when Phil's booming voicemail message came in. I set up an interview for you. You don't have an agent, do you? I had a guy on Crenshaw who called himself a manager that I continued to drop off pictures with, but had never gotten me an audition. Magnificent. Also, Wednesday at 3, come to the studio for your general with the casting department. Stop by my office when you're done. Finally, this guy could get me anything. Everything that I had desired, and he genuinely enjoyed talking to me. He leaned in when I spoke about Shakespeare, and he wanted to know all about the small town ambition that had brought me to LA. We had lunch, and he hung on my every word. That is, until after the third of the appointments he set up for me, when he called, as usual, to check in after, but his voice was different, flat and businesslike, with a finality that gave me chills. That's it, that's all I'm doing for you. It hung in the air like a mushroom cloud. And then I got it. I had done nothing for him. Why should he pick up the phone and rattle the keys to the kingdom to gain me entry for nothing? I felt like I had done something wrong, like I was using him, but I hadn't asked him for anything. I met him as an actor, through an actor, in his office, in the casting department. This is who I was. I tried to pick up a lunch check once, but he scoffed that the studio got it. He was definitely not interested in a grapefruit-scented candle, or the book he once mentioned that showed I paid attention when he talked. He had assistants for that. I immediately got on the phone and ordered a Mrs. Beasley's muffin basket to be delivered to his office at once. It was his assistant, Jonathan, not Phil, who called to thank me, frankly, sounding bored. Phil suddenly couldn't be reached. Crickets. After all that interest in me, after the dazzling appointments where I was served cappuccino in real cups with glass saucers. Now I was an addict who was jonesing for the dealer who gave me a taste and then left. A week later, on my birthday, a card arrived. He remembered. It was so pornographic, it would have made Clarence Thomas blush. Blank on the outside, with a scotched, taped, nude photo of a young man with an erection within, and a raging erection. It was tore from a magazine. The word "you" with a question mark was written next to him in ink. Phil said it looked like me when I called to thank him. I don't know what was more ludicrous, the fact that he didn't or that I called to thank him. But that's what you do when they groom you, when you're picked because they know you're insecure. I felt awful, gross. I was no babe in the woods. It wasn't that I was offended. I just felt stupid for being an actor. That's how I ended up house sitting. I was at the age where everyone thinks if you live in a small apartment and wait tables that you would just really enjoy house sitting for them and taking care of their dogs. I hate house sitting. All the stuff people do that's really generous and supposed to make you think, oh, that was so sweet that they thought to do that, really annoys me or makes me feel self-conscious. The food bought especially for you is always something not that great that you wish they just left you the cash for instead. The guest room that's obviously never used, and the master bedroom which feels way too intimate, like there's a nanny cam watching you while you sleep. Phil was going away and needed someone to take care of the 2 massive English bulldogs that he shared with his now deceased lover, and I wanted to be back in his good graces without having sex with him. Both of us were working an angle. Phil's, I got clearly when he asked me to be there when he returned because he had misplaced his keys. He'd be returning late at night. I was so uncomfortable staying there that I fell asleep in an armchair watching Aladdin. I'd opened a drawer next to the bed and found a dildo and poppers, so now it was Disney in the den for me. At 3 a.m., I woke up, dry-mouthed, hungry, and so into the kitchen I wandered wearing only my underwear. The dogs always stayed in the den that was in the back of the house. They never came off their bed, obviously preferring their company to mine. The kitchen was gigantic, but at the same time with nothing to eat. The Triscuits looked forgotten, all alone on the top shelf. They were the only thing remotely resembling an indulgence, so it seemed perfectly natural to open them facing the cabinet and stuff 1 or 2 in my mouth. Suddenly, the hair on the back of my neck rose. Someone had entered the room, behind me, in the doorway. I knew this, the way you sense someone, but you haven't turned to see them yet. There was a presence in the room. The thing was, I was alone. My heart began to race. I could feel it pounding in my chest. My adrenaline struck like lightning. The Triscuits had this awful taste suddenly, foul and stale. I was being watched. It was a primal feeling deep in my gut, the kind of fight or flight impulse that puts your senses on high alert, eyes on my naked back. Something was definitely behind me, assessing me, evaluating, waiting for me to turn. I heard weight on the floor, but my body was too frozen to turn. Now I knew a thing or two about ghosts. Prince Hamlet, scared, on his knees, speaking before what he knew was his father. Angels and ministers of grace defend us. Be thou a spirit of hell or goblin damned. I was too scared to speak right away, even though intuitively I knew who it was. My breath in and out, until finally. My name is Chris. I'm here to watch your dogs. Nothing changed in the room. Hostility hung in the air like dampness. My voice sounded shaky like a dream. I don't want anything here. Well, I do. I want a job, but you know better than anyone that he's not going to give me that. Words started bubbling out of me, babbling, over-explaining myself, a long monologue about how I was a nice guy and I wasn't sleeping with Phil. I went on about how the dogs missed him, and Phil must miss him too because there were pictures of him all over the house. Gradually, I felt him go, like a mist or a fog rolling out, my heart rate steadying while the kitchen returned to normal. Slowly, I turned and I saw that both bulldogs had come inside and were seated at full attention, staring at the spot where I had felt him. The next day, I left the keys in the mailbox. The ghost was suddenly a mirror, showing me exactly what I was doing. I didn't want to house sit or be there when he came home. I wanted a career, and he knew that, which is why he zeroed in with those interviews instead of just asking me out on a date. I was just as bad, walking the line but not crossing it, not standing up for myself. I was done. Not a ghost would I be. Phil could let himself in. When I wasn't there, he never even bothered to thank me. Both of our messages were clear. A year later, I was up at the studio handing out more pictures that no one would ever see. I found myself walking to Phil's office, even though he intimidated me and often made me feel like he was watching the time. The same assistant, Jonathan, showed me in, declaring I would have exactly 1 minute. What happened to you? I never even paid you for house sitting. I chuckled, knowing that he didn't mean it, and instead found myself spilling what I didn't even know that I was there to share. My fright, the ghost story, late that night in his kitchen. Oh, did you get a visit from Jacob? I couldn't believe that he knew it. There was a wonder, but not surprise on his face. He seemed grateful when I shared my story. He revealed that the house was haunted, that he felt Jacob there all the time. A cleaning lady had known it, and now, to his relief, so did I. I told him about the crackers. Those are Jacob's Triscuits. I could never bring myself to throw them out. That's when we both knew it was real. The dead lover's ghost, a spirit, a phantom, a poltergeist, whatever you want to call it. He looked at me, wanting more, an actual sighting, a touch, whatever information I could give him. I timed it to stay exactly 30 more seconds. I was older now, wiser. I was ending that meeting first.